I'm Lucy Gilly and I'm the manager at Southsides. So just a little bit of background is, first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about Southsides and the Southside Tool Library. And then Joe is going to explain the tool library in more detail and talk about the inventory and how to get the word out to members. And then we have a breakout activity, which you'll be in small groups and you can have a chat about the thing that you're most concerned about setting up a tool library. And then Joe will address those concerns and other things like managing tool loans and measuring and reporting on impact. And then there's question and answers at the end. So if we don't cover anything in the presentation, there'll be an opportunity to talk about it at the end. First, a little bit about Southsides. So I don't know how many of you know Southsides, but we're based in the south side of Glasgow. This is an area that has loads of tenement flats, which are pre-1919. We started in 2011 and we have got to know the area really well and got to know the people, the residents who live here really well. And we've got about 25,000 to 30,000 people within less than a square mile. So that is nearly the population of Stirling. It's one of the most densely populated areas in the whole of Scotland. So a bit about the programs that we run. We have had an energy program from the very beginning, where we support people to save energy. It's funded by the CCF. And we've also had a community garden program from the very beginning, where we supported people to grow their own vegetables and salad crops. So we had a long relationship with the CCF, saving carbon, working hard to produce low carbon outcomes for residents here. And we knew that a tool library would be the next stage. It would help residents improve their own homes, the tools to save energy and the tools to get gardening as well. So we made an application for a tool library and for money to run a tool library, and we were successful. And it was really Joe who made it all a reality. So I'm going to hand over to Joe so you can hear from her exactly how she did it.
Hi everyone. So this presentation is based really on a guide that we produced. It was kind of our lockdown project, how to set up a tool library. We just wanted to document everything that we discovered in setting up the tool library so that we can pass it on to other people and people can learn from it in terms of setting up their own tool libraries. So this is the manual. You can download it from our website. There's a link at the last slide's got a link to the document, so you can find it there. It's got a lot more detail in than this workshop. So just to this guide is really based on how we did it. We know there's a lot of other ways you can set up a tool library. This is how we did it. And also just to give you an idea of our kind of how we're staffed and how we're funded. So we've got one part-time member of staff which is me, and I've been there since the setup, and we were funded by the Climate Challenge Fund. Once Climate Challenge funding had finished, we were run voluntarily for a few months until we got some National Lottery community funding for about 6 or 7 months. And that was until May this year, and obviously lockdown happened. So since then we've kind of been running on reserves and are applying for more funding at the moment. So in terms of what we achieved since we started, this was up until March this year, and we've actually got more like 450 members now because a lot of people joined over lockdown. we have saved members around £20,000 in the cost of buying new tools. We've also reduced the ecological impact of buying new tools and the mining, manufacturing, transporting of those tools. We've empowered people to tackle DIY projects that they might not have otherwise felt like doing, whether it be because they didn't have the finances to buy those tools or not have the confidence to tackle the job. And not listed here is 0.6 tonnes of carbon, which we saved in the first year of the project when we were funded by Climate Challenge Fund, and we haven't tracked it since because we haven't needed to. And it's quite a complex thing to do. So the first part of the workshop is about growing your inventory, how to build up a stock of tools. We use a very low or no cost method, really of asking people to donate tools that they no longer needed. And if you go down this route, I think you'll be surprised at how generous people are. I think a lot of people want to be supportive of a project that really enhances the place that they live. Especially if you can target the right people, the right places in terms of asking for donations. So I'll go through what we did to get that now. So on the left is the flyer that we did some doorstep flyering around a specific neighbourhoods in our area. So as Lucy said, most of the area is tenement flats, but there are small pockets which have houses and with gardens as well. So we kind of targeted those areas where we thought they were more likely to be perhaps older people or people who have attics and sheds where they might be storing tools. So we targeted those households with this flyer to see whether they've got some old tools lying about they could donate to us. And we also flyered in local cafes as well. And we had a stall at a local event to raise awareness that the tool library was coming and that we needed some donations. And on the left is a newspaper article that we've had a relationship with the journalists at the Glasgow Evening Times for quite a while. So we got them to do a little article about us opening and the fact that we needed donations as well. And also social media. We use social media a lot to try and get messages out to people. So we tried to reach as many people as we could in that way. This graph shows you how it went in terms of the donations coming in. So we started kind of June 2018. We did a couple of calls for donations up until September of that year. You can see there's kind of a gradual increase in the donations coming in. After the second call, we haven't really done any more calls for donations at all, and it's just been an organic process of donations coming in through no further effort on our part. You can see after New Year, it looked like people were perhaps having a bit of a clear out as we had quite a boost in donations at that point. So that's something to note as well, as different times of year, you might get different amount, a big boost in donations, and maybe you want to tackle that or tap into that with your marketing. We might need to do another donations drive fairly soon. So we're having a lot of tools that are kind of starting to break down, so we're going to need to start replacing things. So that's something that we'll need to think about. Something to bear in mind as well when you're taking donations of old tools. Be really wary of taking old or broken tools. We've taken in a lot of power tools, particularly cordless ones, where the batteries are just completely dud. Even though we've asked for them to be working, we can't really test them at the point where people are donating them. We kind of just take them and say thanks very much. So just kind of reinforce that message to people that you really need working tools, unless you've got somebody who can repair them or rebuild the batteries on site. So that's something to bear in mind. So when you start building up a stock of donations, really helps to organise the tools straight away, so that you can start putting them into different categories. And when you start coming to loan out the tools, you know where all the tools are. We've given, the way that we did it is we gave each tool an ID number, a 4-digit ID number. So for example, we use something beginning with 3 is a power tool, and something beginning with 3-5 is a saw, a powered saw, for example. So it just really helps if you have that ID number, you know exactly what that tool is and where it's going to be stored in your tool storage location. And this is one of our circular saws with the ID number, just to give you an idea. So you can various ways of putting the ID number onto the tools. We've used different methods. We've used like an engraver, we've used nail polish, we've used permanent marker. You want anything that's kind of leaves a permanent mark on that tool in an obvious place so that you can see it when you're trying to find that tool in storage. So you might want to play around with different methods. You could use a tag system, for example, as well, something that's not going to get in the way of operating the tool. It does look a little bit of a mess, but I assure you it's an organised mess. Everything has its place. So you can see all these the tools in crates that we've got from local businesses for free, and every crate's got a label on it that says what's in that crate, and it's organised by the number of the tool. Our tool storage location's not on the same site as the office that we run the tool library from. But we've had this storage facility for some time. We got it through an arrangement with a local tradesperson who owns it, so we basically use it for free. So it's locked, it's got CCTV, dummy CCTV actually, to deter thieves, and so it's quite secure really. So that's what you really want, something that's secure. And I've heard of other tool libraries of using like shipping containers as well. So whatever you have at your disposal. I know sometimes it's quite hard to find a place to store all your tools, but if you can come to some arrangement with a local business who's not using some sort of lockup, then that might be a solution. A note on insurance as well. We found it quite tricky to get insurance at the start. It's quite hard. I think a lot of insurers were really not used to providing insurance for this sort of operation at that point. So we spoke to SCVO, Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations, and they helped us to find a broker that could sort out the insurance out for us. As a minimum, you really need public liability insurance, and that will cover you for injury or damage when the item is out on loan. You'll also need theft, fire and flooding insurance whilst on your premises. And we were made aware that theft of the items whilst they're out on loan is actually seen as an accepted risk of running a tool library. So you know, things are not going to be insured whilst they're out on loan, but we've actually only had one instance of non-return of tools in well over 18 months. And funnily enough, that was the first tool that we'd ever loaned out, didn't get returned, no matter how hard we tried to communicate with the person. So it's going to be a rare incident. And our insurance costs about £300 a year, I think. So the next part I'm going to talk about is about getting the word out. So you might hopefully build up a stock of tools, and then you want to start letting people know that you're coming. Particularly if you're if you're getting external funding, that might be limited. You need to really kind of take a flying start really when you do get the funding, so that you can start meeting any outcomes that you want to meet as soon as possible. So you might want to set up like an email list. People can give their emails, and as soon as you launch, you can let them know through the email list. The first thing we did was start building relationships with other local organisations who had similar kind of ethics philosophy as we did, so that we could potentially collaborate with them, and they could help to promote us as well. So the way that we did that was through doing pop-up stalls with 5 partner organisations in the area, including the Glasgow Repair Cafe, and we also did Local Organic Grocery as well. So a lot of people that are going to those kind of organisations would also be interested in the tool library as well. Another way of promoting your tool library is using case studies. So I think a lot of people, once they see that your members have had a good experience using the tool library, that will encourage them to then join up if they're a little bit reticent. So doing case studies can be really good to show kind of the sorts of jobs people have tackled, the sorts of tools they've used, and how it's benefited their life as well. And case studies are a really good way of showing to funders too, potential funders, like all the good work that you've done. You can see on here our logo, and branding is another important aspect of setting up your tool library as well. It's really important to have an instantly recognizable logo, just to encourage people to notice you, and also to then remember you once they've had a little time to kind of to think about things. They'll come back because you've had that recognizable logo. And you can strengthen this by using the same suite of like colors and font styles as well that link to your logo, and that kind of really reinforces your whole identity. We used a local graphic designer to design our logo. We looked at a couple of other designers in the area, examples of their work, and then we decided to go for this one because we liked the sort of things that he did. So he worked with us to produce something that we liked. We also use, as I mentioned before, social media a lot. So Facebook and Twitter, we're always sharing stuff. And this was an example of something we did on Facebook. We did a tool of the week. So each week we produced a really colourful image that could be shared, just to give an example of one of the tools that we've got in our inventory, just to kind of highlight what the range of tools that we've got, if people didn't realise we've got a reciprocating saw, whatever. And they're really kind of bright colours to kind of catch people's eyes. So it's just a really easy thing for people to share on social media. And I think definitely interactive content, images really catches people's eye. This is another thing that we did for social media as well. It's a little animation, an animated GIF that the same designer who did our logo produced for us as well. And that's worked really well, sharing on Facebook to kind of get more people's attention. It's really important to make sure that you're on search engines as well, make sure that people can find you easily. So a good way of doing this is you can set up a free business Google account, which make sure you put your address on there, your telephone number, website address, make sure you keep your opening hours up to date as well, upload some images. So whenever people search for like tool library in your area, or that yours was going to be as far up the top of that list as possible. I mean, basically, if you're not on a search engine, if you're not on Google, then effectively you're going to be invisible to a lot of people. So you really need to be on there. I've already mentioned that we had a relationship with the journalists at the Glasgow Evening Times. So this was another article that they did with us, just kind of 18 months in, highlighting what we've achieved so far. We're still going, we're still here, lending out tools. And lots of people have been having positive experiences with borrowing tools from us. So it's really good to free publicity as well, and really good to build that relationship with your local paper. And I mean, even if people are not buying, you hear a lot of stories about people not buying physical papers anymore. This is still online. You know, a lot of papers will have websites, and the articles will be online as well. So this will be searchable on the internet too. We also got some posters and postcard flyers produced by the same designer that did our logo, and we put those up in the window of our high street shop. So we've got a lot of footfall, people walking past the shop, so they could see that. It had all our kind of the opening times, when the tool library was going to be open, and how kind of a really quick and easy messages about how people can sign up and start getting tools. We also distributed the postcards to local cafes, So you really need to try, when you're trying to get the word out to people, you really need to try various different methods to get noticed by as many different people as possible. So we all use different media, and we all go to different places in our leisure time. So you just need to try different methods to reach as many people as possible. A good thing to do as well is to, once you start getting members in, to ask the members how they found out about the tool library, and then you'll know what methods are working and to keep doing those things. So once you've got the word out, you'll start getting people interested in the tool library, and you'll get to the point where you can start thinking about actually launching and welcoming members to join. So there's a few things to think about when, in terms of your membership. So you could do it an annual membership, or you could do perhaps membership for life. Are you going to charge fees? Will you lend certain items only to certain people? So the way we do it is that we do annual memberships, and we have a suggested donation. So it's not mandatory, it's just a suggested donation of around £20. Most people pay less than that, to be honest. Some people do pay 20, but most people pay less. And by attaching a monetary value to it, we felt that it helps people to value the service that we're providing, but by being a donation, it's not, we didn't want to exclude anyone. You know, if not able to afford it, then that's fine. If people don't want to pay anything, that's absolutely fine. We just ask that people, they perhaps consider, if they've got good use out the tool library after a year, that they reconsider whether they're able to make a donation or not. And the donation system was worked fine, especially whilst we're externally funded, and for a while whilst we're running on reserves. But we might have to consider kind of a move to a more mandatory fee in future, and perhaps with like a fee structure which differs for different borrowing frequencies. So if people want to borrow 10 items a month, we would have a higher membership fee than if they only wanted to borrow one item a month, or make a pay it forward membership, where people can pay for other people's memberships. So we use a two-stage membership process to try and keep it as simple as possible for people. And we also use a system called My Turn, which is an online system for managing tool library memberships. You can also manage tool loans, reservations. You can manage your inventory and log tool maintenance and things like that on it. And it was developed by a tool library in the States, so it's purpose built for tool libraries. It's got everything you need. I think there are other systems that you can use as well. I'm not familiar with them, but I do know about My Turn, and it has been really useful for us. So definitely recommend that. It's free to small non-profits to try out, but once you grow, you might want to think about the kind of paid option. I think there might be more features that become available once you're paying. I think it's about £200 a year that we pay at the moment for it, but it's well worth it. I really recommend using it. So our two-stage membership process is members sign up for a My Turn account through the website, and whilst they're signing up for the account, they digitally sign a borrower's agreement and a liability waiver, and those agreements were based on ones that we got from Transition Sterling Tool Library, who lent us the agreements, and then we customised them for our needs and got them checked over by a lawyer to make sure that they kind of stood up in law. Before COVID, we asked people to come into the office and sign the agreements that way, but obviously we want to make everything as contactless as possible now, so that's why we've moved to kind of the digital agreements, and that works absolutely fine. So once they've signed up for an account, they're then able to browse and reserve items from the inventory for pickup at the next time that we're open. And when they do come in to collect their item, we ask that they show 2 pieces of ID. So one is a photo ID to confirm that the person who's picking up the tools is who they say they are, and also separate proof of name and address, and that just proves that the address that we've got for them on My Turn is their actual address, in case, in the unlikely event that we need to recover tools, or write them a letter or something to kind of ask for the tools back. So that just really gives us reassurance that this is the person that they say they are. In those agreements as well that they sign, the borrower declares themselves skilled enough to use the tools. So that is completely on them. They say that they're skilled enough to use those tools, and that helps if, in case of a claim against us, which has, has never happened, but if a claim did happen, then at least we've had them sign that they're skilled enough to use those tools. And we've also quite recently set up a system. A lot of people were asking to pay by card. We don't have a card payment system, but we offered people the possibilities to pay by PayPal. So they can just scan this QR code and then the money goes into our PayPal account straight away. So that's been really popular actually since we did that. We've had a lot of more PayPal payments coming through. People can also give cash. We have a little bowl people can put cash in, try to make it again as contactless as possible. So in terms of opening times, if you can open 7 days a week, then amazing. But it's likely that most people will probably be time limited. Most organisations are going to be time limited in some way. So try to base your opening hours on what's going to be convenient for most people in your community, if you can get some sort of steer on that. The way that we started was to do these pop-ups, as I mentioned before. We started with monthly pop-ups with in partnership with other organisations, where we took our stall and a stock of tools, and we allowed people to reserve in advance, and we brought those tools along so they could pick up the tools at the pop-up. And the reason that we did it like this was that the Southside's office, particularly at the time, was really busy with other projects. We had the energy advice project, a lot of people coming in the office for that. We couldn't really figure out a way to kind of to allow space for the tool library in the office. We also wanted to build relationships with other organisations in the area and kind of raise awareness across a wider area of the south side of Glasgow. So the pop-ups were a really good way of doing that. We felt like that was really good for getting the word out. But to be honest, it wasn't great for borrowing. I think it was quite inconvenient for most people to have to go to a different place every month, and difficult for people to remember as well. There was a different time, different place, so we didn't get a lot of borrowing in that point. But eventually we did work out a way of running the tool library from the Southside's office. And we moved at that point to running it 2 afternoons a week until 6 p.m. And the feedback we got from that was that people loved the fact that we were open later. They could come after work and pick up or drop off tools. And they loved the regularity of it. And it was same time, same days every week. And also the fact that the Southside's office is really central and convenient in this neighbourhood, so it was really easy to get to, really accessible. So great, that was a really good move, I think. And then lockdown happened. So currently we're unfunded. So because of that, we've kind of got running on a reduced opening hours. So we're open Saturdays 12 till 2. But actually this has been really popular, and we haven't opened on a Saturday before. But we find that we're getting almost as many people as we got on 2 afternoons a week, just in those 2 hours on Saturday. So if you can open on Saturday, I think you'll find that that'll be a lot more accessible to more people. So that's been working really well actually. This is just the poster that we've got up in the window at the moment, letting people know that we're open. We also wanted to run kind of, as well as just the loaning out of tools, we wanted to provide a kind of wider service to people related to tools. So last year we ran some workshops, little kind of DIY workshops for people, just to kind of encourage new members to join the tool library who are perhaps less confident, but also to upskill current members as well, and kind of boost their confidence of using different types of tools. And so you can see the pictures here. People made really simple items like window boxes, spice racks, stools, shelves, things like that, all with upcycled pallets that we just found on the street. So it was a really low cost thing for us to do. In the scheme of things, the pallets were completely free, and we had a couple of hours staff time on our part, and then we had a volunteer as well helping us out with the workshops. We got 90 people coming to 4 workshops, and most of those people signed up to be members as well. So we felt like it was quite a cost-effective thing to do in terms of encouraging new people to join, and encouraging existing members to kind of borrow more items and tackle more projects. So that the workshops were really good, really successful, we felt. So next part of the workshop is about you've got your members joining. You now want to start lending out tools. So you'll need a way of kind of tracking tools lent out and tools coming back in, so you know who's got what and what tools are available for people to borrow at any one time. Before you lend out any tools, though, it's really important to do a kind of risk assessment exercise. So you really want to assess risks and apply control measures. So thinking of all the potential hazards that could happen to do with tools or to do with running the tool library in general, their likelihood of happening and consequences if they do happen. And then just list all the things that you could put in place to reduce the likelihood and severity and make those things happen as well. So for example, one of the things we thought about was that our storage lockup is down a quiet alley. So our policy is only to access this during daylight, and to let somebody else know in the office that we're going, and also to carry like a phone that's got full battery as well, so that to help us get out of a dangerous situation. And your insurer is very likely to want to see a regularly updated risk assessment as well in case of a claim. So that's really kind of one of the first things you should do is to do a risk assessment. So again, we use My Turn to check tools in and check them out again. You could do it another way. You could run things using a spreadsheet, for example, but I imagine that could get quite cumbersome. And My Turn provides a suite of other functionalities as well. For example, you can export reports, Excel reports on like the number of loans and different what tools are the most popular and things like that. So it's really useful for reporting stats. So My Turn talks about this checkout and check-in. So checkout is when when a borrower actually takes away a tool, and check-in is when the tool's returned, and there's also a renew function on there as well. You can even link this to like a barcode scanning system. If you had money to buy such a system, that would be great. You could sticker all your tools with a barcode and just scan them every time they come in and every time they go out, and it would just mean you don't have to manually click the button. So that would be the absolute dream, just to have a barcode system for your inventory. And this is our lending process. So because our tool storage is located in a different place to where we run the tool library from, we've always had to ask users to reserve tools in advance to give us time to collect them and then take them back to the office. But obviously that works. I mean, a lot of people are used to, with in kind of COVID times, everyone's used to having to book stuff in advance or kind of book a slot in advance. So it works really well for that as well. So we ask people to reserve by midnight on Thursday for pickup on Saturday when we're open. And we allow people to reserve items for up to 3 weeks at a time. So the borrower reserves the tool on My Turn for the period that they need it. Once they've reserved the tool, this is unavailable for other people to borrow. We then gather the tools from the storage shed. The borrower picks up during our opening times. We mark the tools as checked out on My Turn. the borrower brings the tools back when they finish with them. We check in the tools on my turn, and then they're available for people to borrow again. So it's kind of works in that cycle. We don't charge any borrowing fees, but we have recently implemented a late fee policy, just because we were finding that a lot of people were taking kind of 2 to 3 weeks over the 3-week borrowing period to bring back items, and that was hogging quite a lot of our inventory from other people. So we thought, to be fair, to encourage people to bring back stuff on time, which I think 3 weeks is quite, you know, a decent amount of time, and they can always bring it back and then take it out again another time if they need it again. So, and it's quite a low fee as well. It's like £1 a week for power tools. So, but we just hope that would act as an incentive for people to bring it back on time. Like I said, we've only ever had one person never return tools, but our process for that is to email them first. I mean, they're getting reminders from my turn anyway that they've got an overdue tool. That it sends out automatic emails, but we would then send a separate email saying, you know, just to check everything's okay. Like, and you know, something could have happened. You know, they could have been unwell, or they could be isolating and not been able to bring the tools back. But we email them. If we don't get a response by email, we phone them. And if we don't get any response or still non-return of tools after we phoned, then we'll send a letter after about 6 weeks, just saying, you know, if we don't receive the tool back within, say, a couple of weeks, we're going to suspend your membership. So, like I said, we've only had to suspend membership for one person. We also lend out e-bikes as well. We've got 3 e-bikes which we lend out, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. But we would report those to the police. If they don't get returned, we'd report those to the police. We wouldn't report tools to the police, I don't think, because we just don't have anything that's that high a value. There's been a little bit of a change to lending out after COVID. So the main difference is that tools are placed in a quarantine crate. So when people bring them back to the tool library, we ask them to place the tools directly into the crate, and they're left completely alone for 3 days before we touch them and sort of inspect them. So they're completely unavailable for other people to borrow during this time as well. We also, when we collect tools from storage, will use gloves or sanitize hands just before touching tools. So that's really the kind of main measures that we've got. We also got a little bit of funding to kind of adapt to COVID as well. So we had this beautiful screen, I think, built in our office to kind of separate staff from customers, built out of upcycle pallets again, and perspex screens. So just keeps us completely separate. We've had a lot of people saying this is the most, like, the beefiest COVID measures they've seen in any shop. So hopefully that gives people confidence to come in and borrow tools during this time, and it gives us confidence as staff as well to come in and run the tool library. So yeah, we had this screen, and we also used the money to buy the heavy duty storage crates for quarantining as well. So this is a bit of a close-up of the tool library. So that long screen is also the energy advice work that we do as well, but the bit on the left is the tool library, and we've got these shelves where when somebody reserves tools, I'll put the tools on the shelf, label it with their name, and then they can just completely kind of contactlessly take the tools away, and there's no sort of touching hands or anything. And then when they return the tools on the right, they'll put them into this heavy duty crate, and we'll just leave that alone for 3 days. So we've got quite a few of those crates that we can swap in and out. We only have to touch the actual crate rather than the tools inside. Like I said before, we lend e-bikes as well. So we got some funding from the Energy Saving Trust, buy 3 e-bikes. We have a bike trailer too. And the reason we bought some e-bikes, I know they're not kind of conventional tools, but we felt that it would complement, we had the facility for lending out items. So, you know, we kind of e-bikes are kind of a transport tool in a way, and it really complements there's a new cycle path that goes right outside our office into town called the South City Way, and also there's a lot of electric vehicles popping up in the area as well. There's a car club you can borrow electric vehicles through, and there's electric vehicle charging points as well. So there's kind of a bit of a drive in the area to kind of increase take up of electric vehicles and electric bikes. So that's why we started to take on the e-bikes. We do have a specific e-bike agreement that you have to sign if you want to hire out the e-bikes, and also we don't charge a deposit for any of the other tools, but we will take a passport or driving license as a deposit for the e-bikes. We won't take any money, but we'll take those identity documents as a deposit. So the person would have to leave those with us for the duration of their hire. So we kind of just rely on that as a, you know, hopefully people will come back with e-bikes because they're quite valuable, but obviously we contact police if they don't come back. So a lot of it is based on trust, but we're also following the lead of other kind of places that hire out bikes on a regular basis. That's a similar thing. They don't tend to charge a deposit, they just take like an ID document or something. So yeah, that works pretty well. And we also require people to go through a half-hour induction and do a test ride before they use the e-bikes, and we provide a really beefy lock with them as well. A note on safety now in terms of lending out tools. So we have an annual PAT test carried out on all the electrical tools, and your insurer is likely to want to see evidence of an annual PAT test as well. Can use any local electrician really. This is our electrician Richard, and normally he charges around £3 to £5 per item. Keep records that they'll give you. The records will say what items have passed the PAT test and what items have failed it, and you want to, any items that have failed the PAT test, you'll need to take them out of your inventory obviously, and look at repairing them or what have you. You'll need to do the PAT test in batches as well, so that all your power tools are not taken out of use at one time. And it's also worth noting as well that a PAT test only checks for safety of the tool. It doesn't check that the tool's actually working as it should. So you'll need to do a separate operational check to check that it's working. You can use My Turn to log safety checks as well, so that's really useful. You could essentially have a paperless system for your tool library because pretty much everything's on My Turn. So you can log PAT tests, you can do different types of safety checks on there, you can log like routine maintenance and repair and things like that. You can do routine checks yourself if you feel competent. And the way that we do this is we follow guidance in the tools manual. So if the manual wasn't provided to us when it was donated, when the item was donated, we'll search online for that model, and often you'll find a PDF manual online. But if you can't find that specific model's manual, you can often just use a manual for a very similar tool. So for example, most circular saws will have the same kind of safety checks that you need to go through because they'll have similar parts. So you can use the guidance in another brand of tools manual to kind of go through the safety checks yourself. It's worth noting as well, it's a good idea to keep organised, to have like a storage system for everything to do with safety checks. So things have a system for items waiting for check, items that have been checked and are fine to go back in storage, and then items that are checked and need a repair, just so you keep everything organised and you know what's happened to what. We also put a little tag on each of our tools once it's been checked, or you know, if it needs repair and things like that, just to kind of say what needs to be done with it, basically. Particularly if you've got more than one person working in the tool library as well, so that you know, everybody knows what's going on. And yeah, that was something like Helen mentioned about trying to find somebody who can repair the tools is yeah, something that we really need to get at the moment actually is somebody who can repair. About a third of our power tools are needing repair at the moment, so that's quite a lot of tools that are, you know, just not able to be lent out. So something we're working on at the moment is trying to get you know, either somebody who works in the organisation or somebody you can contract it out to, or, you know, if there's a local repair cafe that you can work in partnership with to get your tools repaired, then, you know, it's something that you'll need to think about, because things will break when they're getting used on a regular basis. Also keep a good stock of personal protective equipment as well. So things like dust masks, gloves, cut-resistant gloves, goggles as well, that you can give to people when they're taking away like a particularly hazardous tool. If they don't want to take it, then that's fine, but at least you've given them the option of, you know, you're kind of covering yourselves. You've provided as much of protection as possible. That was something that our insurer was keen to see, that we've got a stock of PPE and that we're, you know, it's ready for people to borrow. Or obviously you wouldn't return a single-use dust mask, they can just take that. So the next section's about once you've kind of started your tool library, it's been running for a little while, you want to measure what impact you've had and report that to people in the community or potential funders. So different methods to use depending on the audience. Some people or funders might be interested in how people's lives have benefited from borrowing tools, engaging with the tool library. They might have been empowered to tackle jobs that they didn't feel empowered to tackle before. They've created links to the community, perhaps through workshops, or they've been able to get stuff done with minimal cost. They might also be interested in how housing quality is improved through people being able to access the tool library, or energy efficiency, perhaps if people have been able to install draft proofing or other energy efficiency measures, or maybe they'll be interested in how much carbon or resources have been saved. So it depends on the funder and the person what kind of information they want. So just going to show you a few things that we did to show people the impact that we'd had. This is just a graph to show how many loans we'd had. So you can see right after the DIY workshops and right after January, there was quite a big spike in tool loans, and we put that partly down to the DIY workshops. We had a lot more members from that, a lot more people feeling more confident to use the tools, but also this kind of New Year's resolution thing where people, you know, in January people want to you know, change their life and start a new hobby and kind of do things a different way, which sometimes drops off like after February, but we saw a bit of a spike there. And then we closed in April because our funding ran out, and we reopened again in May, but for a shorter, we didn't have as many opening hours were shorter, so you can see like loans weren't quite as high as they were before. So kind of just gives just communicates to people really you know, how things have been going. We also, I mentioned it before about the case studies, we did these things called tool tales, where we wanted to kind of give the tools a personality almost, and tell the story of the kind of circular story really of the tools coming in from you know, who they were donated by and what they were used for by that person, and then the person that borrowed them from the tool library, what they used the tool for. So it kind of just helped to bring the tools alive a little bit and make the stories a little bit more engaging. So that was quite a popular, just a one pager that we shared on Facebook. Another thing that I said before, we use social media a lot, and this was just a Twitter post that we did on the first day back after lockdown. We just took photos of some of the people that came to pick up tools, and I think it just helps people that are looking at it to see these are, you know, real people are borrowing from the tool library. It's easy to, you know, you're sitting at home, particularly when we've all been through lockdown, and your kind of engagement with the outside world is perhaps a little bit less than it has been. So just seeing the faces of real people that are picking up tools from the tool library helps helps people know that we're back in business. There are real tools you can borrow. Other people like you are borrowing them. So just kind of helps to encourage more people to get involved. And the last thing that I wanted to note was about connecting with other tool libraries around the world, really. So it's a really good way of, you can learn from other people's mistakes and their successes, and then help them learn from yours as well. So one of the first things that we did before we set up the tool library was to visit the Edinburgh Tool Library and the Transition Sterling Tool Library. And we found that really, really helpful to connect with them, and just they gave us loads of tips on things that have worked for them and things that haven't worked, and particularly around insurance. And we got our membership agreement was based on the Transition Sterling membership agreement as well. So that was really useful. If you can, something like this workshop, connect to other tool libraries. There's also these 2 Facebook pages. There might be more Facebook pages, but these are the ones that I know about. Where a lot of tool libraries are members, particularly the Tool Libraries and Libraries of Things group. There's always people on there asking questions about, like, oh, how did you do this and that, and I've asked a few questions on there as well. So that's been really useful to find out how other tool libraries do things, and what works, what doesn't. So I really recommend doing that. So that brings us to the end of the workshop. We'll have I think we've got time for 15 minutes or so for questions, but you're more than welcome to contact me. You can email me at tools@southseeds.org if you have any questions that you wanted to ask based on the workshop. Give me an email. You can, the tool library, Southside Tool Library inventory is at that My Turn link there, and also if you visit the Southseeds website, you can download the full guide that this workshop is based on. So that's got a bit more in-depth information in. But happy to answer questions if anyone's got them now.